We asked over 900 women between the ages of 50 and 70 a very direct question. When you notice a man who is over 60, what parts of his body do you actually pay attention to first? And before I tell you what they said, I want to tell you something about how they responded. Because many of them smiled before they answered. And when we asked why they smiled, they said the same thing in different ways. They said most men assume the wrong things entirely. When men try to guess what women notice first, they almost always give the same answers. Chest, height, shoulders, muscle size. And the women in our conversation said those guesses missed the point completely. After 60, attraction works differently. Women in this stage of life are not comparing men to 25-year-olds. They are not looking for perfect physiques or holding men to standards that belong to a completely different chapter of life. What they are doing is something more interesting and, honestly, more hopeful than that. They are quietly observing signals that reveal something much deeper than appearance. They are looking for signs of energy, self-respect, and genuine engagement with life. One woman put it in a way that stayed with everyone who heard it. She said, "When I see a man now, I'm not asking how young he looks. I'm asking whether he still looks alive." That comment appeared again and again during our conversations, in different words, but always carrying the same meaning. And when you sit with that for a moment, it changes the whole picture. Because what these women were describing is not a physical checklist. It is something psychologists call nonverbal presence. The signals a body sends before a single word is spoken. Long before anyone introduces themselves or begins a conversation, the body is already communicating. It is communicating habits, discipline, energy, a relationship with life that has been built quietly over decades. And women, particularly women who have lived long enough to know what actually matters, read those signals with remarkable accuracy. So today we are going to walk through 7 specific body areas that women in this survey mentioned consistently. 7 things they actually pay attention to when they notice a man who is 60 or older. And I want to be honest with you up front about what this conversation is and what it isn't. This is not about trying to look younger. It is not about competing with men half your age or chasing some impossible standard of physical perfection. Almost every woman we spoke with made that point clearly. They are not expecting a 60 or 70-year-old man to have the body of someone in his 30s. That expectation simply does not exist for them. What they are noticing is something much more specific and much more attainable. They are noticing whether a man still cares, whether he still shows up for his own life, whether the signals his body sends communicate someone who has remained engaged with the world or someone who has quietly checked out. And the difference between those two things shows up in ways that are small, consistent, and entirely within your control. Let's start with the first body signal women mentioned in the survey. And when many of them said it, they almost laughed, not because it's trivial, but because it sounds deceptively simple. They said posture. Posture is the very first signal most people register when a man enters a space. Before anyone studies his face or notices what he's wearing or evaluates anything about his physical condition, they see how his body carries itself. Imagine a man walking across a room. His shoulders are rounded forward. His head drops slightly toward his chest. His upper back curves inward as if he is slowly collapsing into himself. That image communicates something before he has done or said anything. It communicates fatigue, withdrawal, sometimes a kind of quiet defeat that has nothing to do with what is actually happening in his life, but reads that way regardless. Now imagine another man of the same age entering the same room. He may not have a remarkable physique. He may carry some extra weight. He may have gray hair and the visible signs of having lived a full life, but his shoulders stay back. His chest remains open. His chin stays level and his gaze moves through the room with a relaxed awareness. That second man communicates something entirely different before anyone has exchanged a single word with him. Over 70% of the women in our survey said posture reveals more about a man's daily life than his fitness level. That number surprised a lot of people when we shared it. But when the women explained their thinking, it made complete sense. They said posture reflects how a man moves through life. A man who stands tall tends to appear mentally present, engaged with the world, interested in what is happening around him. And that quality of being genuinely present in your own life, is one of the most quietly attractive things a person can communicate through their physical bearing. The good news about posture is that it is one of the most improvable things on this list. It is not determined by age or genetics in the way that other physical qualities are. It is determined by habit, by how you hold yourself when you walk through a grocery store or sit at a table or stand waiting for something. Small, consistent choices made every day. choosing to bring your shoulders back, choosing to keep your chin level, choosing to take up your full physical space without apologizing for it. These accumulate over time into a physical bearing that communicates exactly what those women described. Presence. Engagement. A man who still carries himself with purpose. The second body area women mentioned surprised many people who heard the survey results. It was the hands. Several women explained it in almost identical terms. They said hands are one of the most honest parts of a man's body because they are almost impossible to hide. A man can choose his clothes carefully. He can style his hair, wear a jacket that fits well, select shoes that look sharp. But his hands are visible during every ordinary moment of daily life. When he shakes someone's hand, when he holds a cup of coffee, when he opens a door or reaches for something across a table. In those small moments, women are quietly noticing details that most men have never thought to pay attention to. They notice whether the nails are trimmed or uneven and neglected. They notice whether the skin looks reasonably cared for or severely cracked and ignored. They notice whether the hands look active and capable or like something a man has stopped paying any attention to entirely. One woman in the survey described it directly. She said, "Hands show whether a man still pays attention to the small parts of his life." And that observation, that idea that small details reveal something about a man's overall relationship with himself appeared again and again in different forms throughout our conversations. The women were very clear that they understand hands change with age. Veins become more visible. Skin changes texture. These are natural shifts that happen to everyone, and nobody is being judged for them. What they are observing is effort, the difference between natural aging and neglect. And that difference, while it takes very little time to address, communicates something significant about whether a man is still paying attention to himself. There is also another dimension to this worth understanding. Hands that show evidence of real physical work can be genuinely attractive. Calluses from lifting, building, fixing things, working in a garden, these communicate activity and usefulness in a way that resonates at something close to a primal level. What women are reading in the hands is whether a man is still engaged with the world in practical, physical ways, whether he still does things. And that engagement, communicated through something as simple as the condition of his hands, contributes to an overall impression of a man who is still fully present in his own life. The third body area women mentioned in the survey surprised many men even more than the previous two. More than 80% of the women said this area influences their first impression more than muscle size. And that number alone caught people off guard, because most men assume women are primarily focused on the chest or shoulders. The area they were talking about was the neck and jawline. The reason this matters is not about vanity or chasing some idealized standard of facial definition. It is about what the neck and jawline quietly communicate about a man's health habits and his relationship with his own physical condition. After 60, the body changes in visible ways around the face and neck. Skin loses elasticity. Fat distribution shifts. Many men develop softness under the chin or around the neck. These are normal changes that happen to virtually everyone. The women in our survey were explicit about this. They are not comparing a man of 60 to a man of 25. They understand and fully accept that bodies age. What they are noticing is something different. They are noticing effort. Some men accept aging and completely stop making any choices about their physical condition. Others continue making small, consistent adjustments that keep their overall appearance balanced and healthy looking. And even modest improvements in body composition can reshape the jawline and neck area significantly. Losing even a small amount of excess weight often restores definition around the chin and neck that may have seemed completely gone. Women notice that difference. Several of them explained that the jawline sends a quiet message about how a man manages himself. Not because facial definition alone equals discipline, but because the combination of physical signals a man sends, including the condition of his neck and jaw area, contributes to an overall impression of someone who is still taking his physical well-being seriously. Head position was also mentioned here. A man whose chin drops toward his chest consistently can appear withdrawn or disengaged even when nothing about his actual emotional state reflects that. But a man whose head stays level and aligned, whose gaze meets the world directly, communicates presence and confidence before a single word has been spoken. The fourth body area women mentioned was one that surprised almost everyone in the room when results were shared. It was the forearms, not the chest, not the shoulders. The forearms. And when you understand why, it makes complete sense. Forearms are one of the few areas of a man's body that are consistently visible during ordinary daily life. When you roll up your sleeves during a warm afternoon, when you open a car door, carry something across a room, reach across a table during a conversation, your forearms come naturally into view. They are always visible in a way that most other areas of the body simply are not. And because of that constant visibility, they communicate something important quietly and continuously. Women interpret forearms as a signal of practical strength and capability. Not the kind of strength that exists to be displayed in a gym mirror, but the kind that suggests a man can handle real-world tasks, that he uses his body, that he lifts things and fixes things and builds things and stays physically engaged with life. One woman put it in a way that resonated strongly with the rest of the group. She said, "Forearms give the impression that a man is useful and capable, and those qualities are deeply attractive at a level that many women don't even consciously register." What women are not expecting here is exaggerated muscle size or anything that looks engineered for display. What they notice is tone and evidence of activity. Forearms that show natural development from carrying groceries, doing yard work, using tools, gardening, climbing stairs, even simple grip work. These communicate a life that involves physical engagement with the world. And that signal, quiet as it is, contributes meaningfully to the overall impression a man creates. The fifth body area women mentioned was the smile. And when you hear this listed alongside posture and jawline and forearms, it might seem like a completely different category of thing. But it belongs here because of what a smile actually communicates and how powerfully it does so. Several women explained that a man's smile is one of the first emotional signals they notice in any interaction. And what they are reading in it goes far beyond simple friendliness. A genuine smile communicates ease, warmth, comfort with oneself and with the people around you. It suggests that a man is psychologically present in the moment rather than somewhere else in his thoughts. And that quality, the quality of being genuinely, warmly present with the person in front of you, is deeply attractive in a way that no physical feature can replicate. The women were also very specific about the difference between a genuine smile and a performed one. Psychologists sometimes call an authentic smile a full face response because it involves not just the mouth, but the cheeks, the eyes, the overall softness of the expression. It appears at natural moments in conversation rather than being held artificially. It fades gradually rather than switching off abruptly. And it creates, in the person receiving it, a felt sense of warmth and safety that lingers even after the interaction has ended. Women describe this quality of genuine smiling as one of the signals that most clearly separates men who feel comfortable in themselves from men who feel tense or performing or self-conscious. And that comfort, that easy, unforced warmth that shows up in a genuine smile, often becomes more attractive with age rather than less. Because by 60, a man who smiles genuinely has usually earned the comfort that makes such a smile possible. He has lived enough to not need every interaction to go perfectly. And that ease shows. The sixth body area women mentioned was the eyes. And again, what they are reading in the eyes has very little to do with physical appearance in the conventional sense. They are not evaluating color or shape. They are reading presence. Women said almost universally that a man's eyes reveal whether he is mentally here or somewhere else entirely, whether he is engaged with the moment or distracted by whatever is happening in his internal world. A man who makes relaxed, natural eye contact during conversation appears composed. He appears genuinely interested in the person in front of him. He appears emotionally stable in a quiet, effortless way that communicates self-assurance without any need to announce it. The women were careful to distinguish between natural, present eye contact and the kind of intense staring that can feel uncomfortable or aggressive. What they find attractive is balance. A man who looks at someone while they speak, who holds their gaze with calm interest rather than darting away every few seconds or looking over their shoulder, who is clearly listening rather than waiting to speak. That man communicates something through his eyes alone that many men never manage to communicate in an entire conversation. He communicates that he is fully there, that his attention is genuine, that the person he is with matters enough to receive his complete presence. And women, particularly women who have reached a stage of life where they have excellent clarity about what they actually want and value, recognize that quality immediately and remember it long afterward. Alert, curious eyes were also specifically mentioned. Eyes that still carry genuine interest in people and the world. Eyes that suggest a man has not retreated into himself or given up on finding things worth being curious about. Several women describe this as one of the most compelling things an older man can communicate. Not physical perfection, not the absence of aging, but curiosity. The sense that there is still a man in there who is interested, engaged, alive to possibilities, paying attention. The seventh and final body signal women mentioned was perhaps the most encompassing of all. It was the way a man moves, not how he looks when he is standing still, not his physical features observed in isolation, but the quality of how his body actually moves through the world, how he walks across a room, how he sits down at a table, how he opens a door or reaches for something or turns to acknowledge someone who has just entered the space. Women describe this as something they notice almost immediately and often without even realizing they are observing it. Because movement is continuous in a way that a single photograph of someone never is. And the story it tells is told in real time, moment by moment, every time a man is in a room with other people. Movement that is steady and controlled and unhurried communicates confidence in a way that is very difficult to fake consistently. When a man walks with balanced steps, with his shoulders open and his head level at a pace that feels purposeful without being rushed, his movement suggests that he is comfortable occupying the space he occupies, that he belongs where he is, that he is not anxious or seeking approval or bracing for something to go wrong. Women describe this quality using the word that came up more than almost any other word in our entire survey. Grounded, movement that feels grounded, settled, deliberate without being rigid, present without being tense. The contrast they drew was with movement that appears hurried or hesitant or uncertain. When someone shuffles their steps or moves through a room as if they are trying to take up as little space as possible, or rushes through interactions in a way that suggests internal anxiety, the impression it creates is one of someone who does not fully feel at ease in their own body or their own presence. And that impression, even though it says nothing directly about the man's actual qualities or character, shapes how other people feel in his company before he has had a chance to demonstrate any of those qualities in more direct ways. Women in the survey, particularly those who had arrived at a place in their own lives where they had real clarity about what they wanted from connection, said they value presence more than performance. A man who moves through the world with patience and intention, without trying to impress anyone, without performing confidence while feeling uncertain underneath, communicates something that goes deeper than any single physical quality. He communicates that he is still fully engaged with being alive, still curious about the world, still committed to showing up for his own life with energy and purpose. And now I want to bring all 7 of these together because individually each one matters, but together they point to something that I think is the real heart of everything these women were describing. None of the 7 body signals we talked about today are about perfection. Not a single one. They are not about having the body of a 30-year-old or competing with younger men or chasing standards that belong to a different decade of life. Every woman we spoke with made this point in her own way. Age is not the issue. What they are noticing, what they are actually responding to and being drawn toward, is a man who still carries himself with self-respect. A man whose body communicates in quiet, consistent ways that he has not given up on himself or on life. Posture reveals whether a man still brings energy and purpose to his daily existence. Hands reveal whether he pays attention to the small details of caring for himself. The neck and jawline reflect the relationship he has with his own physical health and discipline. Forearms hint at practical strength and a life that involves genuine physical engagement with the world. A natural smile communicates emotional warmth and ease with himself and others. The eyes reveal whether curiosity and presence are still alive in him. And the way he moves through the world communicates, more clearly than words ever could, whether he still feels at home in himself. None of these require dramatic effort or complete physical transformation. They come from simple, consistent habits practiced over time. Standing a little straighter, keeping your hands reasonably groomed, staying physically active in ways that are sustainable and genuine, allowing yourself to smile warmly when something warrants it, making real eye contact during real conversations, moving through your daily life with intention rather than anxiety. These are not impossible standards. They are the natural expressions of a man who respects himself and who remains genuinely engaged with the life he is living. And that is what these 900 women were really describing when they talked about what they notice. They were describing self-respect, not a physical ideal, not youth, not the absence of aging. Self-respect, the quiet evidence visible in these 7 specific ways that a man still shows up for himself, still cares, still carries himself as someone who has not checked out of his own life. And that quality, that genuine living presence that radiates from a man who truly inhabits himself, becomes more attractive with age rather than less, because it is rarer with age. And rarity has its own kind of gravity. If you watch this all the way through, write something in the comments so I know who stayed for the full conversation. And tell me where you are watching from, because it always means something to see how far these ideas travel around the world. Subscribe if you haven't yet, because every week we go deeper into real human psychology, attraction, and the things about how people actually connect that most conversations never quite get to. Thank you for being here.